My name is Carolyn Polak. I'm 28 years old, and 2 months ago, I learned something I didn't think a grown woman could still be blindsided by. Sometimes the person who claims to love you doesn't want you beside them. They want you edited, cropped out, muted. I'm a certified welder at a manufacturing plant in Columbus, Ohio. It's not glamorous. It's not the kind of job people brag about at rooftop bars downtown, but it's steady, honest work, and I'm good at it. Like, really good. I've been there 6 years. I started as an apprentice with cheap gloves and trembling confidence, then worked my way up to senior welder. I pull in about $65,000 a year, solid benefits, reliable overtime when I want it. I specialize in TIG welding, the precise kind that demands patience and a steady hand. You can't fake TIG, you can't charm your way through it. The weld either holds or it doesn't. I earned my certifications through night classes while working full-time, paid for every course myself. There were weeks I'd leave the plant smelling like burnt flux, eat dinner out of a takeout container in my car, then go sit in a classroom under fluorescent lights learning metallurgy like my life depended on it. In a way, it did. My supervisor, Pete, once told me I had the steadiest hands he'd ever seen on someone under 30. The way he said it, like it actually mattered, stuck with me. More than any compliment I've ever gotten about my hair or my smile. My life is simple, and I like it that way. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the east side. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I bought it 3 years ago with money I saved because I wasn't wasting my 20s trying to look rich. My spare room is half storage, half gaming setup. My truck is a 2016 Silverado, paid off. I have enough in savings that if my washer dies tomorrow, I don't panic. I just handle it. That's the thing people don't understand about trades. They assume you're barely surviving. But while my high school classmates were drowning in student loan debt and chasing unpaid internships, I was building a life with my own hands. My dad was a machinist before he retired. He taught me early that there's nothing shameful about working with your hands. Pride isn't a suit you put on for other people. It's something you carry when you're alone, when no one is clapping. And for a long time, I felt like my world was exactly that. Mine. Quiet. Controlled. No drama. Then I met Evan. Evan is 27. He works in corporate event planning for a firm downtown. Exactly the kind of place where people talk about optics and leverage like it's normal language. I met him about 14 months ago at a 4th of July cookout. I remember because he showed up in a crisp white button-down like he was attending a magazine shoot, not a backyard barbecue. He was charming in that effortless way that made people lean in when he spoke. Clean lines, perfect teeth, phone always buzzing with work emails. When he laughed, it sounded practiced, but I didn't recognize that yet. I just thought he was confident. He was also gorgeous, the kind of man who knew how to be seen. At first, it was easy. The first few months felt like a honeymoon you didn't want to wake from. He asked questions about my work, like he was genuinely curious. He touched my hand when I talked, like he admired the roughness of my skin. He said things like, "I like that you're real." I believed him. He'd pick me up from the plant sometimes for lunch. I'd climb into his car smelling like metal and sweat, and he didn't flinch. Pete even commented one day when Evan came inside to find me, "That's a good man you've got there, kid." I remember smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. But around month 6, things started shifting. Not with one big argument, but with little paper cuts. Small comments that sounded harmless on their own, but together started bleeding me out. "Maybe you could dress up more when we go to nicer places. Do you have to talk about work so much? It's kind of intense." And then the one that made my stomach tighten every time. "It's just blue collar." The way he said it, like it was a smell he couldn't quite tolerate. I tried not to overreact. I told myself he came from a different world. Maybe he didn't mean it like that. Maybe he was just stressed. People say dumb things when they're stressed. But the comments didn't stop. They grew roots. One Saturday, we were getting ready for brunch with his friends. I'd put on clean jeans, a fitted polo, nice shoes. I even checked the mirror twice because I knew Evan cared about appearances. He stopped me at the door. "You're not wearing that, are you?" His tone wasn't playful. It was clinical, like I'd failed an unspoken test. "What's wrong with it?" I asked. Evan sighed the way someone sighs when they're explaining something obvious to a child. "Nothing's wrong with it for, like, a backyard barbecue, but we're going to the Garden Bistro. It's nicer than that." I ended up changing into slacks and a button-down. Standing in my bedroom, tugging at the collar like I was preparing for a job interview instead of brunch, I felt a faint pinch of something ugly in my chest. At brunch, his friend Madison asked what I did. I'm a welder, I said. She gave me this sympathetic smile. Polite, thin, loaded. The kind people give when they're trying not to show judgment but can't help it. Oh, that's practical, she said, then immediately turned to someone else. Evan didn't defend me. Didn't say anything about how hard I worked, how skilled I was, how I'd paid for every certification myself. He just sipped his mimosa and changed the subject like my life was an embarrassing detail to be smoothed over. That meal, I felt like a guest in my own relationship. And then the criticism started expanding, like Evan had been holding it back and finally decided I could handle the truth. My apartment was too plain and needed personality. Translation: expensive furniture and decorator touches I didn't want and didn't need. My truck, which I'd saved years to buy and paid off completely, was suddenly a bit much, especially compared to his friends' leased BMWs and Audis. Don't you want something newer? He suggested one night, casually, like he wasn't asking me to trade security for a monthly payment just to look more impressive. He started pushing me to hang out with his coworkers more. They were all corporate types, marketing managers, financial analysts, people who wore $1,000 suits and talked about quarterly projections over $5 coffee they photographed before drinking. They weren't mean outright. That was the problem. They were the kind of people who could slice you open with a smile and still claim they were being friendly. One night at dinner, a guy named Trent, trust fund energy practically dripping off him, asked what I did. When I told him, he laughed like it was a novelty. Oh, so you're like a trade girl, he said, dragging out the words like he was describing a weird hobby. Evan didn't say a word. He just smiled and nodded along as Trent talked for 20 minutes about his MBA program and how he was being groomed for senior management. In the car afterward, I asked Evan why he didn't stick up for me. Caroline, he said, like I was being dramatic. You're being too sensitive. Trent was just making conversation. Conversation, right. That should have been my warning sign. That should have been the moment I put the whole relationship down like a hot pan and walked away. But I didn't. I rationalized it, told myself I needed thicker skin, told myself love meant adapting. I didn't realize I was the only one adapting. Because while I was bending and shrinking and trying to fit into his world, Evan was quietly building a version of me he could tolerate in public. And the terrifying part? I didn't fully understand that until the party. The party Evan had been talking about for 2 weeks straight. The one he said could change everything for his career. The one that, without me knowing it yet, was about to change mine too. If I'm honest, the signs had been there long before Evan ever said the words, "Don't talk to me." I just didn't want to read them out loud. After that brunch, something subtle but irreversible shifted between us. Evan didn't suddenly become cruel. He didn't raise his voice or insult me outright. That would have been easier to walk away from. Instead, he started doing something far more effective. He started editing me. It was in the way he'd pause before introducing me to new people, like he was calculating how much of me to reveal. Sometimes he'd say, "This is Caroline," and stop there. No mention of what I did, no context, just a name, stripped of substance. When people asked questions, he'd answer for me. "She works in manufacturing," he'd say quickly, before I could open my mouth. Manufacturing sounded softer than welder, cleaner, less me. At first, I told myself it was harmless. Maybe he was just being efficient. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But the more time I spent around his world, the more I felt like an accessory he was afraid might clash with the decor. He started going through my closet without asking. Not aggressively, casually, like it was his right. "This could be upgraded," he'd say, holding up a shirt I wore all the time. "This is kind of dated. This might be fine for errands, but not if we're going out." He offered to take me shopping, together, he emphasized, as if it was a gift, as if I should be grateful for the opportunity to spend money I didn't want to impress people I didn't like. I declined, politely, repeatedly. That seemed to bother him more than if I'd agreed. When his coworkers came over for a dinner party, Evan insisted on hosting at my apartment. I watched him apologize for my space like it had personally offended him. "It's very bachelor pad," he laughed into his phone while standing 10 feet away from me. "She hasn't really developed her aesthetic yet." Her aesthetic. I stood there holding a stack of plates, listening to him explain my life away like a temporary condition. My furniture was comfortable, functional. I had a good TV, a solid sound system, shelves full of books and tools I actually used. But suddenly, it wasn't enough. Not sophisticated, not intentional, not worthy of his people. The worst part was how often he framed his criticism as help. I just want more for you, he'd say. You have so much potential. I don't want you to limit yourself. Limit myself. Because apparently welding, something I'd chosen, worked for, excelled at, was a limitation. He started hinting that I should go back to school, maybe get an office job, something with upward mobility, something that sounded better when he said it out loud. I'd ask him what exactly was wrong with my job. He never answered directly. Instead, he'd smile and say, "Nothing's wrong with it. It's just not forever, right?" That question lingered in the air every time, like my entire life was a placeholder until I became someone he could proudly stand next to. My best friend Lena saw it before I was ready to admit it. Lena runs her own auto repair shop. We met years ago through a mutual friend, bonded over grease-stained hands, and people who assumed we didn't know what we were doing because we were women. She met Evan 3 times before she pulled me aside one night after work. "Caroline," she said, leaning against my truck, arms crossed, "that man is embarrassed by you." I laughed too quickly. "That's not true." Lena didn't smile. "Watch how he acts when it's just you versus when his people are around." "He's just trying to fit in," I argued. "It's not personal." "Last week," she said calmly, "I watched him apologize to his coworker for your truck before you even offered them a ride. He literally said, 'Sorry, we're taking Caroline's vehicle,' like it was a warning." I wanted to defend him. I really did. "He was joking," I said. Lena gave me that look, the one mechanics give customers right before delivering bad news. "You're smarter than this. I've seen this pattern. It starts with clothes, then your job, then your personality. Eventually, you're apologizing for existing." I waved it off. I wasn't ready to hear it. I should have listened, because the social humiliation didn't stop. It escalated. At another dinner with his coworkers, a woman asked me what I like to do outside of work. I mentioned restoring old engines with Lena on weekends. "Oh," she said, tilting her head, "that's unique." Evan laughed lightly. "She's very hands-on." Hands-on, like I was a quirky hobby. Then there was Trent again, the trust fund guy with the Porsche he didn't pay for. He cornered me at a group dinner and asked, "So do you ever plan on doing something else? Or is welding, like, the end goal?" I looked at Evan. He was right there, watching. He said nothing. I answered calmly, but inside something cracked. Later in the car, I asked him why he never stood up for me. "You're overthinking it," he said. "They don't mean anything by it." But I meant something by it. I felt something by it. And he didn't care. That was when I started noticing how often Evan talked about image, about perception, about how important it was to be seen the right way by the right people. That's when the party came up. The one he said could make or break his next promotion. The one he talked about nonstop for 2 weeks. What he'd wear, who would be there, how crucial it was to make the right impression. He practiced conversations in the mirror, stayed late getting his hair done, bought a new jacket just for the night. Everything about it screamed performance. The night before the party, he stayed over at my place. I was on the couch watching a documentary about metalwork techniques. He was on his phone, scrolling endlessly. "So," I asked during a commercial break, "what time should I pick you up tomorrow?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally looked up, his expression made my stomach drop. That careful, rehearsed look people get when they're about to say something they know will hurt, but hope you won't react to. "Actually," he said slowly, "I need to talk to you about that." And suddenly, every warning Lena ever gave me came rushing back at once, because I knew, deep down, that whatever he was about to say wasn't just about a party. It was about whether I was allowed to exist in his world at all. Evan sat up straighter on the couch, like he was about to pitch an idea to a boardroom instead of speak to the woman he claimed to love. "This party tomorrow," he began carefully, "it's really important for my career. Like, really important." I muted the TV. "There are senior partners coming," he continued. "People from firms we're trying to lock in as long-term clients. The kind of people who decide promotions, bonuses, future projects. I need everything to go right." I nodded slowly, waiting. The silence between us stretched longer than it should have. "And?" I asked. He exhaled through his nose, rubbing his palms together. He'd clearly rehearsed this. Every word felt pre-approved. "And I just think," he said, choosing each syllable like it might explode, "that it might be better if we kept things professional tomorrow night." My chest tightened. Professional how? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear behind his confidence. Fear of judgment, fear of optics, fear of being associated with the wrong thing. "I think it would help if you didn't, talk to me too much at the party," he said, "or stand near me, or join my conversations." I stared at him. He rushed on, words tumbling out faster now. I just need to be able to network without distractions. And it's easier if I'm not worrying about your welder girlfriend embarrassing you, I finished calmly. His face flushed. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Evan? My voice stayed even, which seemed to frustrate him more than anger would have. He folded his hands in his lap, posture rigid. These people are sophisticated, educated. They move in certain circles. They have expectations. And I don't? I asked quietly. You're great, he said quickly. You really are, but you don't always know how to talk to people like that. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Remember that dinner with Trent, he continued, when you spent 20 minutes talking about welding certifications and metal types? Everyone was bored. They asked me about my job, I said. I answered. I know, he said, but you could have summarized, or changed the subject, or read the room. And the gallery opening? He added before I could respond. When you wore jeans? You told me it was casual. It was art gallery casual, he corrected. There's a difference. He reached for my hand then, squeezing gently like that made the words kinder. I'm not trying to hurt you, Caroline, he said. I just need tomorrow to go perfectly, for my future, for our future. There it was, the emotional blackmail wrapped in concern. So what exactly do you want me to do? I asked. His shoulders relaxed slightly, like he was relieved I hadn't stormed out yet. Just keep to yourself, he said. Don't talk unless I come to you first. Don't join conversations with my bosses or clients. Don't tell work stories. Just blend in. Be invisible. Invisible. The word echoed in my head. I looked at him. The man I'd been with for over a year, the man who slept in my bed, ate at my table, benefited from my stability, and realized he wasn't asking for support. He was asking for erasure. The logical part of me screamed to say no. To tell him if he was embarrassed by me, then I shouldn't be there at all. That if he needed to hide me to succeed, then he didn't deserve me. But another part of me, the exhausted part, the curious part, wanted to see how far he'd take this. Wanted to see what happened if I gave him exactly what he asked for. Okay, I said calmly. His entire body relaxed. Oh, thank God, he said, relief flooding his face. Thank you for understanding. It's just for one night, a few hours, and then things go back to normal, I promise. Normal. He kissed my cheek and went back to his phone, already mentally at the party, crafting his networking strategy. I sat there, heart pounding, thinking about what Lena would say if she knew. He's treating you like a liability. She'd be right. Friday night came faster than I expected. Evan picked out my outfit himself. Dark gray slacks, white button-down, black shoes. Nothing flashy, he said. Just forgettable. I looked at myself in the mirror. Clean, polished, generic. Like a background character in someone else's success story. Perfect. I drove us to the venue. He barely spoke, too busy texting people who were already there. Remember, he said as we parked, just blend in. I nodded. I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious. Because if Evan wanted me invisible so badly, I was about to show him exactly what that looked like. The party was at a renovated foundry downtown. Exposed brick, iron beams left deliberately unfinished, Edison bulbs hanging low like the place was trying very hard to look industrial without ever being dirty. Drinks cost more than a full lunch at my usual spot. Everyone looked expensive. Everyone looked busy. We arrived at 7:15. The moment we stepped inside, Evan transformed. His posture straightened. His smile sharpened. His phone disappeared into his pocket like it had never existed. He scanned the room the way predators do. Quick, alert, already calculating where to go first. He glanced at me once, just once. Then he walked toward the bar where a cluster of senior partners stood laughing, already mid-performance. Message received. I grabbed a glass of water and found a spot near a concrete column along the wall, close enough to be present, far enough to be irrelevant, exactly where I was supposed to be. The room buzzed with forced enthusiasm. People laughed too loudly, nodded too eagerly. Every conversation felt like a pitch, disguised as friendliness. Names were dropped like currency. Everyone was looking for someone more important than the person they were currently talking to. Evan thrived in it. He moved through the room with surgical precision. 5 minutes with the senior partners, 3 minutes with potential clients, a quick laugh with coworkers, a hand on an arm here, a perfectly timed compliment there. He was brilliant at it. I'll give him that. Every so often he glanced my way. At first it was quick, a check-in, making sure I hadn't wandered, making sure I was behaving. Each time our eyes met, I gave him a small, pleasant smile. I didn't wave, I didn't move. I stayed exactly where I was. About 20 minutes in, a woman approached me. Mid-40s, confident posture, expensive wine glass. You're Caroline, right? She asked warmly. Evans mentioned you. I nodded and smiled. How are you enjoying the party? She continued. Great turnout. I nodded again, took a sip of water. She blinked, waiting. The venue is gorgeous, she added, gesturing around. I love spaces like this. Another nod, another polite smile. Her brow furrowed slightly. Are you okay? I gave her a thumbs up. She laughed nervously. All right then. Enjoy yourself. She walked away slowly, glancing back at me twice. I watched her immediately lean in to whisper to another woman, both of them stealing curious looks in my direction. I felt a flicker of something inside me. Not guilt. Control. More people came. A man from accounting. Someone from marketing. A woman who introduced herself and asked what I did for work. I responded to every question the same way. Nods, smiles, shrugs. Not a single word. When someone asked directly, so what do you do? I mimed welding. Steady hand, invisible torch, imaginary metal. Then I smiled. Confusion spread like a ripple. Oh, someone said slowly. Okay. They drifted away. Word traveled fast. I could feel it. The sideways glances, the subtle pointing, the whispering. I had become the party's unanswered question. About 45 minutes in, a man named Kevin, someone Evan had mentioned before, approached with determination. So, he said, friendly but curious, Evan said you work in manufacturing. What exactly do you do? I smiled, nodded, made the welding motion again. You're a welder, he guessed. I nodded enthusiastically. That's interesting, he said. Do you like it? Big nod, thumbs up. He waited. The silence stretched. Well, cool, he muttered, backing away like he'd encountered a wild animal that might suddenly lunge. I watched him immediately find someone else, miming exaggerated talking motions with his hands while shaking his head. They both looked over at me. I took another sip of water. An hour in, Jennifer, one of Evan's senior colleagues, the kind he always spoke about carefully, approached me with a practiced smile. You must be Caroline, she said, extending her hand. I shook it. I've heard so much about you, she continued. Evan says you work in industrial manufacturing. That must be fascinating. I nodded, like she'd just told me the most profound thing I'd ever heard. What's the most challenging part of your job? She asked. I mimed welding again, this time letting my hand shake slightly, then steadying it, finishing with a firm thumbs up. She stared. Steady hands, she said slowly. I nodded. A pause. So, what do you like to do outside of work? I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of me and Lena leaning over an engine, grease on our faces, laughing. Oh, she said, you restore cars. I nodded, pointed at Lena, made a steering wheel motion. Well, Jennifer said carefully, discomfort creeping in. That's great. She excused herself within seconds. I watched her walk straight to Evan. Their conversation was short, but his reaction wasn't. His eyes widened. He looked at me again, really looked this time. Not relief. Confusion. Concern. Still, he didn't come over, because that would mean breaking his own rule. By 9 o'clock, Evan started glancing at me more frequently. The looks were different now. Tighter. Uneasy. At 9:30, he finally walked over. Hey, he said, smile strained. You having fun? I nodded. He waited. Nothing. You've been standing here all night, he said. Don't you want to walk around? Grab some food? I shrugged. Caroline, he said quietly, is everything okay? I nodded slowly, maintaining eye contact. His smile cracked. Why aren't you talking? He whispered. I pulled out my phone and typed a message, then held it up for him to read. You told me not to talk to you at the party. His mouth fell open. That's not what I meant, he hissed, glancing around nervously. I meant don't interrupt my conversations. I typed again. This is me blending in. Being invisible, just like you wanted. This is ridiculous, he muttered. You're being childish. I tilted my head, raised an eyebrow, and took another sip of water. He stood there, trapped. He couldn't argue without making a scene. He couldn't fix it without admitting fault. So he walked away. And for the first time all night, I saw panic replace polish. At 10:15, he tried again, bringing a coworker with him, hoping I'd cave. Caroline, he said brightly, too brightly. Scott was just telling me about a new client they landed. Isn't that interesting? I nodded at Scott. Scott launched into his explanation, glancing at me expectantly. I listened, smiled, and gave him a thumbs up when he finished. The silence was unbearable. Okay then, Scott said awkwardly, retreating. Evan's jaw clenched. Can we talk outside? He demanded. I gestured toward the exit. After you. The cool night air hit us like reality. What is your problem? Evan snapped. Why are you acting like this? I typed again. I'm following your instructions. I didn't mean literally don't speak. Hard to embarrass you if I don't say anything. You're making me look bad. How? I stayed out of your way. I didn't interrupt. I was invisible. He ran a hand through his hair. People are asking if you're okay. Tell them I'm being obedient. You're being petty. I'm being exact. There's a difference. He stared at the phone, then at me, realization dawning too late. Please, he said finally, voice dropping. Just come back in and act normal. I shook my head and typed one last message. You were very clear about what you needed tonight. I wouldn't want to embarrass you. I walked back inside alone and resumed my place by the wall. Evan followed a few minutes later, but the magic was gone. His smile was forced, his laughter hollow. The party ended around 11. When he finally came over to leave, his eyes were red. His confidence cracked. Ready to go? He asked quietly. I nodded. The silence on the drive home was heavier than anything I'd felt all night. And this time it wasn't performative. It was final. The drive back to my apartment was quiet in a way that pressed against my ribs. Not the comfortable kind of silence. Not the kind you share when words aren't needed. This one was thick, charged, waiting. Evan kept glancing at his phone, typing messages I didn't ask about. Damage control, I assumed. Rewriting the night, so it didn't look like it actually was. I pulled into his parking lot and put the truck in park. Neither of us moved, huh? Are you going to talk to me now? He finally asked. I turned to face him. What do you want me to say? He flinched at the sound of my voice, like he'd forgotten what it sounded like after hours of silence. I want you to explain what that was, he said. You embarrassed me. I did exactly what you asked, I replied calmly. You told me not to talk to you at the party, so I didn't talk to you, or anyone. You know that's not what I meant. Do I asked. Because you were very specific. You didn't want me embarrassing you. You didn't want me joining conversations. You didn't want me talking about my job. So I removed the possibility entirely. That's not fair, he snapped. No, I said quietly. What's not fair is asking your girlfriend to disappear so you can look better. He turned toward me, frustration bleeding into desperation. I just needed you to be aware of the setting. The setting where your welder girlfriend isn't good enough to be seen with? That's not... He stopped himself. Too late. I leaned back in my seat. You didn't have to say it. You've been saying it for months. Every comment about my job, my clothes, my apartment, my truck, every time you apologized to your friends for me, every time you tried to help me become more acceptable. I was trying to support you. By fixing me, I asked? By turning me into someone you weren't embarrassed to stand next to? He didn't answer. I'm not embarrassed by who I am, I continued. I work hard. I'm good at my job. I pay my bills. I built my life with my own hands. I've never pretended to be anything else. He stared straight ahead. But you, I said softly. You're embarrassed enough for both of us. That's not true, he whispered. Then why did tonight happen? Silence. That told me everything. I spent 4 hours tonight watching you perform for people you don't even like, I said, laughing at jokes you don't care about, pretending to be someone you think they want. And you were willing to hide me to do it. His eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean it like that. I know, I said, but intent doesn't erase impact. So, what are you saying? He asked, voice breaking. I'm saying I'm done, I replied. Done shrinking. Done apologizing. Done being treated like a liability instead of a partner. You're breaking up with me, he said. I'm choosing myself, I corrected. Tears streaked down his face, mascara smudging under his eyes. I love you. Maybe, I said gently, but you love the idea of who I could become more than who I actually am. I opened his door. Take care of yourself, Evan. He hesitated, then stepped out. He stood on the curb for a moment, looking back at me like he wanted to say something that might fix everything. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't change how you see me. I drove away. I called Lena before I even hit the main road. It's over, I said. There was a pause, then, about damn time. I told her everything, the party, the silence, the fallout. By the end, she was laughing so hard she had to pull over. You stood there for hours without saying a word, she said. That's the pettiest, most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I feel relieved, I admitted. That's because you're free, she said. The next few days, Evan texted, apologies first, then promises, then blame, then anger. I didn't respond to any of it. What was there to say? Work felt lighter. My apartment felt like mine again. I stopped second-guessing my clothes, my voice, my existence. A few weeks later, I ran into Evan at a sports bar. He asked if we could talk. There's nothing left to talk about, I told him. He nodded, eyes wet. I really did love you. Maybe, I said, but love doesn't ask someone to disappear. I went home that night, kicked off my boots, and sat on my couch, covered in grease and metal dust from a long shift. And for the first time in months, I felt whole. 2 months later, my life looks exactly the same on paper. Same apartment, same truck, same job. But I'm happier. I even adopted a dog, a rescue pit mix named Rivet. He doesn't care what I do for a living or whether my furniture has personality. He just cares that I come home and throw his ball. Someone once told me I should want more. They were wrong. I already had everything I needed.